I came here for the same reasons as you. To escape. To get back at the people who hurt me. But this place, it has a way of eating you alive. You start with a plan, but eventually you lose yourself in it. Zara had never known the warmth of family. Not since her mother's passing. Anyway, her father remarried when she was just 7. But it was soon became clear that her stepmother had no intentions of treating her like a daughter. Instead, she was more like a servant in her own father's house, constantly overlooked, starved, and left in tattered clothes that were too small for her growing body. Her stepmother's children, her half-siblings, were showered with all the care and affection Zara could only dream of. They wore new clothes, ate well and went to school, while Zara's stomach spinned with hunger most nights, and her feet ached from days spent running errands. If she dared to ask for a slice of bread, or even garri to drink, her stepmother would yell and remind her, "You are lucky to even have a roof over your head." The day Zara turned 18, she couldn't take it any longer. The world outside seemed harsh, but it couldn't be worse than what she was enduring at home. One cold morning as her family slept, she slipped out of the front door with nothing but the clothes on her back. She vowed she would return someday, different, stronger, powerful, and ready to make them feel every bit of the suffering she had endured. Life on the streets was even more difficult than she imagined. She wandered from place to place, sleeping wherever she could find a spot. Days blurred together, marked by a constant struggle for survival. Hunger became her best companion. And soon so did desperation. She met others like herself, young people driven to the street by circumstances beyond their control. They introduced her to a world she never imagined. One where money and comfort were exchanged for their bodies, where people sold themselves just to get by. At first, Zara resisted. She told herself she would find another way. Something that wouldn't make her feel as hollow and broken as she was already. But survival had a way of dulling her sense of self. When faced with extreme hunger, she found herself falling into the very world she had once sworn she would never enter. Zara became a call girl. Yet, even in that life, Zara couldn't find satisfaction. She was making little money, yes, but it never felt like enough. The cold emptiness of her choices haunted her every night. The more she earned, the less fulfilled she felt. It was as though something darker, a hunger for revenge, kept eating away at her inside, pushing her to seek more. One evening, while scrolling through her phone, Zara stumbled upon a video that would change everything. It was about Porta Potty Dubai. She heard the whispers in her circle of friends before, but she hadn't paid attention. Now, she sat watching and reading all she could about the luxurious lifestyle promised to young girls who were willing to go to Dubai. The money was unfathomable, enough to live like a queen, to buy anything she wanted, to become someone people feared and respected. This was her ticket. If she could endure just a bit longer, she would walk back into her stepmother's life, unrecognizable and powerful, making them lick her feet. Without hesitation, she found contacts, reached out, and arranged to be on the next flight to Dubai. The arrangement happened quickly, almost too easy. Soon enough, Zara found herself on a plane to Dubai, her stomach twisting with equal parts of fear and anticipation. She had heard about the demands and the unusual expectation of the party. But she hardened herself to whatever might come. After all, hadn't she suffered her entire life? Hadn't she endured her stepmother's wickedness, starvation and humiliation? Nothing could be worse than what she had already gone through. When she arrived at Dubai, the city's glittering light almost blinded her. She was escorted to a towering building where everything smelled of wealth. Zara had never seen such luxury in her life. She was dressed in clothes that felt softer than anything she had ever worn. The makeup artist worked on her face as though she were a celebrity. She stared at her reflection, barely recognizing the girl in the mirror. This was the power money held. And soon, she would hold the same power. Yet, in the hours that followed, she realized the true price of that power. As the party began, she found herself surrounded by strangers with cold and calculating eyes. They made demands at her, each one testing her limits in ways she had never imagined. It wasn't just her dignity on the line, it was her very soul. As the hours dragged on, Zara's sense of self began to dissolve. She had trained herself to block out the pain and the humiliation, to remind herself over and over that this was all part of her plan. She thought of her stepmother, of her half-siblings with their privileged lives, of the way they had looked down on her as if she were nothing. The bitterness in her heart kept her standing. Even as every instinct screamed at her to run, she would not give up. Not now. Each party was different, yet everyone left her feeling hollowed out. The men were rich, powerful, and demanded everything without a share of care. They treated Zara like she was disposable, a plaything for their entertainment. And Zara, with each degrading moment, learned to become numb. Her only comfort was the growing sum of money in her account. It was the only thing that reminded her why she was doing this, why she had chosen to walk this path. Soon, she told herself soon, she would have enough money to return home, transformed into someone untouchable, someone they would never dare to come close to, someone they would worship. After one particularly dark night, Zara lay in her lavish hotel room, staring up at the ceiling. She was unable to sleep, her body ached and her heart felt heavy, with a sadness she couldn't shake. She wondered if this was worth it. The money was flowing in, but at what cost? She didn't recognize herself anymore, and with every party, she felt a part of her slipping away. It was during one of these sleepless nights that Zara met Mira, a girl not much older than herself who had been in Dubai for 2 years. Mira was friendly, with a warm but gentle smile, and unlike the others Zara had met, she seemed different. There was a sadness in her eyes that Zara recognized. They quickly bonded, sharing stories over coffee and stolen moments after the party. One evening, as they sat on the rooftop watching the city's light flicker below, Mira turned to her. "You know, I came here for the same reasons as you. To escape, to get back at the people who hurt me. But this place, it has a way of eating you alive. You start with a plan, but eventually you lose yourself in it." Zara listened, a strange sense of dread settling over her. "But I have to do this. I have to make them pay," she said, her voice almost pleading, as if trying to convince herself more than Mira. Mira placed a hand on hers. "I know. I thought revenge would give me a closure too, but All it gave me is scars. Ones no one can see, but ones I carry every day. She paused, looking out over the city. If you go back to face them, make sure you are still you. Don't let this place take away the person you were before all this. The words lingered in Zara's mind, haunting her through each party and each encounter that followed. She kept telling herself she would leave soon, that she would take the money she had earned and go home to exert her revenge. But as the weeks turned into months, Zara began to wonder if she would ever return as the person she once was. Eventually the call came. A client, a man known for his vast wealth but cruel taste, had specifically requested Zara. The money was astronomical, more than Zara had ever been offered. This could be it, she thought. Just one last night, and she would have everything she needed to return home in triumph. She accepted without a second thought, hoping this would finally end her journey here. But as the evening progressed, Zara realized just how dangerous this man was. His demands were unlike anything she had ever experienced. And for the first time, she felt real fear in her chest. There was a darkness in his eyes, a twisted pleasure that made her blood run cold. She was not only satisfying him, but also his pets. She tried to remain composed, tried to remind herself of her goal, but something inside her was breaking. She didn't know if she would go through with it, and she wasn't sure she would make it out of this party alive. As the night progressed, Zara's desperation grew. She wanted a way out. She wanted to escape this nightmare, but she was trapped, just as she had been trapped in her stepmother's house all those years ago. She could feel the weight of her choices pressing down on her. She wondered if revenge was worth this price. Somewhere in the midst of the chaos, Zara found herself clutching her phone. Mira had given her a contact, someone she could call to seek for help if she ever found herself in real trouble. Trembling, Zara dialed the number, her heart pounding as she waited for an answer. A low, calm voice answered on the other end. "Who is this?" Zara's hand shook as she whispered, "I need help. I need help. Mira gave me your number. I don't know if I'll make it through this night." There was a brief silence, then a reassuring voice. "Stay calm. Tell me where you are." She quickly gave the details. The man on the other end told her to hold tight and not to alert anyone. "I'll be there soon. Whatever happens, keep your phone close," he said before hanging up. The minutes that followed felt like hours, each one marked by a growing terror. Zara was trapped in a cage, a luxurious surrounding, a wicked contrast to the horror she was enduring. The man she had come to see was growing impatient, his demands becoming more violent and inhuman. But she reminded herself she had survived worse. If she could just make it through this night, if she could just escape all of this, she could finally be free. She held her phone in her hand as she made her way into the hallway under the guise of needing air. Her client's voice trailed her behind, sharp and commanding, but she ignored it, her eyes fixed on the door at the end of the hall. Just as she reached for the handle, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Zara's breath hitched as she saw two men approaching her. Her first instinct was to run, but before she could react, one of them spoke. "Are you Zara?" She blinked in surprise, not recognizing the man's face, but sensing a strange familiarity in his tone. Yes, I am," Okay, let's go. Mira sent us. Relief flooded through her as they led her quickly out of the building until they reached an unmarked car waiting in the car park. She climbed into the back seat, still struggling to process that she was actually free. In the car sat Mira. Mira looked at her with a mixture of relief and concern. "I'm so glad you called, Zara." Zara let out a shaky breath. "I thought I was strong enough. I thought I could handle it." Mira nodded, a look of quiet understanding on her face. We all think that at first, but sometimes, some things aren't worth the price we pay. As they drove through the dark streets, Zara felt it was time. It was time to return home. Zara was determined. She had gone through a lot not to fulfill her goal. Few days later, she returned home, well loaded with cash. She hid under the disguise of selling gold and diamonds in Dubai and Saudi Arabia. She got a new apartment, a luxurious SUV. Finally, it was time to head to her family house to see her stepmother. But as she drove into her father's compound, she met a dead compound, no one in it except her father. Curious and disappointed, she asked where everyone was. But to her greatest shock, her stepmother and her kids passed on in a ghastly motor accident months back. She didn't get the news because she already cut ties with her family years back. Zara's heart sank as her father's words settled over her like a heavy fog. She stood frozen in the empty compound, unable to believe it. The stepmother who had tormented her, and the siblings who had looked down on her, the family she had plotted to return and show off to, all gone in an instant. Her father, now a shadow of the man she remembered, sat quietly under the shade of a large tree, watching her with a sorrowful gaze. He explained that her stepmother and her children had been returning from a wedding in a neighboring town when their car collided with an oil tanker. There were no survivors. The accident had happened months ago. His voice was trembling as he said each word. Zara felt an overwhelming emptiness swallow her. She had spent years building her life around a desire to come back and show them how far she had come. She had survived the worst, fought through humiliation, endured everything, just to prove that she was worth more than they had ever given her credit for. And now, there was no one left to see it. It was all a waste of time. Zara walked through the empty compound, her mind flooded with memories of all the times she had gone hungry, all the nights she had cried herself to sleep, and all the vows she had made to return stronger. She had planned her revenge for so long that she had no idea what to do with herself now that it was impossible. Her father's gentle voice broke her thoughts. "Zara, I'm so sorry for everything you went through. I know I failed you. I allowed things to happen that never should have." He looked down, his shoulders slumped with guilt. I was blind, too caught up in my own world to see how much she suffered. She looked at him, the pain in his eyes reflecting her own. She had hated him too for not protecting her, for letting her suffer. But now, looking at him, she saw a man who was just as broken and lost as she was. In that moment, something shifted in her. The anger, the bitterness, the hunger for revenge, it all began to melt away. But it was replaced by guilt of her actions, especially in Dubai. Was all her plans to get back at her stepmother worth the horror she had went through? Revenge had fueled her for years, but now, with no one left to direct it towards, she realized it was all a waste, and it was time to actually let go. Zara reached out and held her father's hand. "It's okay, Baba. We can't change the past, but maybe we can start over." She looked into the clouds. Memories of her horrible life played in her mind. She realized that she spent years focused on getting back at those who hurt her, only to find that the people she aimed to punish were already gone. What does this story teach? It teaches just one thing: that sometimes holding on to anger and bitterness only hurts us more in the end. The more we plan a revenge, the more impossible it becomes to even achieve it, making it really hard for us to move forward. Let's learn to let go. Let's learn to live our lives to the fullest. Let's learn to be happy.